Hello everyone, I'm Zeenat Firdaus and I have Dr. Sukant Khurana with me, who is a well-known entrepreneur, mentor, public speaker, and a scientist. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Zina. Thank you for having me here.
Sir, I have a question for you. Why do you think everyone should know about design thinking and what is it?
Excellent question. Design thinking has been practiced for quite some time. It's become buzzword for last few decades. An HBR article in actually 2008 made it uh, buzzword for every office. But really, as opposed to conventional ways of thinking, every time you build something, think from basics, make something human centered. In fact, it could even be pet centered if your end purpose is to serve pets. Basically, uh, empathize, right, with who your target is. Define your problem, ideate differently. I'll get to it. Prototype quickly, cheaply, test it, and have it as a not just a linear process. Let it feedback, right? Test it, something doesn't work. So it's instead of just taking an approach of saying X works for Microsoft, or let's say Google has implemented so and so, or a real estate company is doing so and so, or a school is working so and so, and that's why we'll do this. We ask this question, let's say if I'm trying to run a new school, what are the challenges in India? Example, uh, for this particular example, it'll be that majority of Indians struggle to think independently, do something innovative on their own. Um, they're often stuck in a system where they are memorizing things as opposed to learning fundamentals. Um, they are not happy even as kids, and in the long run, majority of people who are called middle class are even those who have the so-called top white-collar jobs such as physician, attorneys, engineers, managers. They're stuck in a rat race and honestly not doing that well from global standards. So, what will make them do well for career? What will make them better as individuals? So their own personal lives are better. Whether it makes them better wives and husbands, makes them better parents, makes them better children to their elderly parents later in life, whether it makes them better citizens. So what changes have to be made rather than simply saying, okay, if I'm in Delhi, what are the five top schools doing, right? Learning from others is not a sin, but copying others is a sin without thinking about what is the challenge. So I just gave you an example of it. Um, and that example is actually particularly dear to me because I went to an amazing school till class third. Uh, it's I would even say give a call out to it. It was a school we didn't have a regular class structure. There were probably more teachers than students. We built various things, including we were playing with electronics, building not just clay toys but even robots at that young age. It was a school for creative kids, gifted kids, called Shivniketan, run by a German expat to India and all. But that's a different story. So I just gave an example of something close to my heart, and has contributed to my resilience, despite facing a lot of horrible things in past. But design thinking is essentially at the core of it an iterative process in which you seek to understand your users. You challenge assumptions, redefine problems, create innovative solutions which you can prototype and test. The overall goal is to identify alternative strategies and solutions that are not instantly apparent. One of the key things I would even say is instead of just you thinking alone, right? There being a lone genius who comes out with a plan, however big anyone's ego may be. For example, I may think of myself special in my own company, but doesn't matter. End of the day, if the process involves all employees buying into the idea, people sort of mentally tuning in at the same wavelength, everyone contributing, and also reaching a stage which is part of some design thinking processes where you might have two contradictory solutions, and instead of black and white, sometimes choosing uh, finding ways to walk on both the roads, finding a fusion and seeing what succeeds, right? Willingness to question assumptions is a very important thing. Willingness to not see the world in either or is a very important aspect of design thinking. In some ways, design thinking and lean thinking for success is a hope for complex problems such as of climate change, where even a lot of fixes are extremely political and honestly not always effective. There are hopes for resolving wars, there are hopes for better business, there are hopes for cleaner energy, there are hopes for space exploration. Design thinking is at heart of very successful things, including amazing success stories that we hear of in US, from the topmost things to smallest startups. Um, in essence, design thinking revolves around a deep interest to understand the people for whom we design products and services. It helps us observe and develop empathy with target users. It enhances our ability to question. In design thinking, you question the problem, the assumptions, and the implications. It proves extremely useful when you tackle problems that are ill defined or unknown. It involves ongoing experimentation through sketches, prototypes, testing, trials, new concepts, and ideas. So, if we have to really break down design thinking into five categories, five-stage process, I would say empathize is the first part. Second one is to define the problem. Third is to ideate. Fourth is to prototype. Fifth is to test. But it's not just a linear thing. When you empathize, you prototype, and then you again ideate, right? You test it, you go back to the drawing board, and you again define your problem, because once you test it, you find there are issues. So it's an iterative process, right? Not a simple linear process. It involves feedbacks, but there are five stages if you want to think it in terms of sort of theory. I learned design thinking not by reading books. That's I've been solving things, and then later somebody said, "You're a design thinker." And in fact, one of the first jobs which was offered to me, and I unfortunately, foolishly did not take up, was potential of being a professor in design thinking when I was first returning to India in 2014. So people could see that I'm a design thinker. I never sort of thought of that as a word and never learned it by books. I learned it through all my life experiences. So basically, um, design thinking is actually for everyone if you're really looking for solutions, right? Uh, Team builds a product, not just some one genius with a fully formed idea. One of the very important thing of design thinking by several important people, such as Tim Brown and all, who wrote a very popular book, Change by Design, they will say that it's not like, the ideas don't come out in a fully formed way. When we sit together in our company, Ioncure, it's not that the ideas suddenly descend in a fully formed way. There are people coming up with good ideas all around. We work on it, and some ideas turn out to be not feasible, some turn out to be feasible, some turn out to be feasible, sound good on paper, but they're not required. Essentially, are they really adding a lot of value, or are they for intellectual stimulation? People things should add value. One of the key things of design, before even this word design thinking was coined, in terms of basic principles, has been that, look, even from perspective of advertising, not necessarily just products. The idea earlier used to be that, let's say you're making adding an image to some text like in an ad. That image is an add-on, but it wasn't part of the design as a whole, right? So it wasn't all serving the same purpose. In fact, some people who pioneered minimalism, I like some kind of minimalism, not all kinds, and I'm not going to get into the nuanced aesthetics and the philosophy of why certain kind of minimalism appeals to me and not all. I would also sort of leave out aspects of modernism and response to modernism, both in commercial art and in fine art. But design from the artistic point of view is only one element. Design is one of the best examples of design is a Apple phone. But a quintessential thing of design is essentially that everything serves a function. It's not there for added looks or anything. Okay. So if it is adding beauty and it's adding function, that's sort of design, right? There are several heroes of design thinking, but you look at some of the top products you like, you will find heroes um, all around. Okay, so and there have been several ideas of design thinking, right? People say what are the principles. People will argue that there is it has to have collaborative component. It has to have even employees buying into things, and there has to be a bias towards action, right? Okay, so there are people who have written about various commandments, out of which Dieter Rams, who's considered one of the godfathers of product design. Dieter Rams was he was I mean, he is a German, not was, he's still alive. uh, is one of German top designers who's literally reinvented product design, and he came up with almost like 10 commandments of design. It says for product design, it said it has to be innovative. It must make the product useful. It should be aesthetic. It should make the product understandable. So you look at the beautiful radios and all things he designed. It is unobtrusive. It is honest. So you're not promising more than your design should not make it look like it's doing more than what it's doing. It is long lasting. uh, it is thorough down to the last detail, is environmentally friendly, and involves as little design as possible. Okay, so avoiding gaudiness and all. There can be separate philosophical discussions on the other extreme of beautification, what some may say gaudiness. So, not necessarily saying every aesthetic has to be minimalist. In fact, a lot of art I do is actually quite opposite minimalist, but that's a different discussion. But design thinking, if somebody is, let's say, a fresher getting into a company, why design thinking is important? Can that person one day dream of being a CEO? Does that person aspire to be somebody big one day? If they do, they should make design thinking as um, part of their experience, part of their living, breathing, uh, everyday passion to change. And they will learn that a lot of approaches of conventional companies are outdated, and they will really excel. So I think design thinking is for everyone, and anyone who's interested in doing good things must actively be a design thinker. Whether they're formally trained in it or not is actually not as important.
Wow. I bet most of us did not know about design thinking and how important it is. Thank you for answering my question, sir.
Thank you, Zenith.
Anyone who is interested in free training, which Ioncure provides, can apply at ioncure at the rate volunteer at the rate ioncurerx.com. Sorry, that was volunteer at the rate ioncurerx.com. Thank you.
Thank you.